All right, what is up, guys? Today we have a brand new festival. We have the Theme Chronicle Festival. It's actually back. This was one of the funnest festivals the original time around because they hit so many decks and they leave so little decks to play that it actually makes it kind of fun because a lot of the really broken decks that end on macrocosmos on legs and like all of the really toxic stuff in the metagame right now actually aren't available. So you actually have to play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh and have fun. But before we get to the great decks that are available, do you want to make your Master Duel experience a whole lot better?
Are you ready to take your Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel play experience to a new level? The Untapped GG Companion is here for you. Use the deck tracker to know exactly what cards you have in your deck, and to go over any cards you aren't familiar with yet by hovering over them. It instantly updates when you draw a card, and automatically hides if you check your extra deck or graveyard. This is the perfect tool to help you master a new deck. The Untapped GG Companion also lets you import decks directly into the game in seconds. Copy any YDK or YDKE deck string, create a new deck in game, click the Start Auto Import button, and let us take the wheel. Once the duel is over, check your win rate on your personal stats page. Brag among your friends and share your decks so they can import them into the game too. Start your path to master today by downloading the Untapped GG Companion at ygom.untapped.gg.
All right, so for my first recommendation, we have Suship. Suship is actually a deck that always slips through the... it somehow always slips through every single time. It's a fun deck to play. And basically what this deck does is... it's a rank 4 deck. It's a rank 4 / rank 5 spam engine. And essentially what this does is you fill your deck with the Suship monsters. They special summon themselves for free. You can either go in archetype and special summon Suship monsters, or you can make basically any rank 4 in the game. It's incredibly generic. It's incredibly easy and fun to play, actually. And it's actually all things considered, fairly a budget deck. You use a bunch of staples, and then the highest rarity cards in the main deck are pretty much SRs, outside of the staples, of course. If you want to play Lightning Storms, you can. If you want to play more Hand Traps, you can. If you want to play Call by the Grave, you can. You can choose what you want in terms of the... In terms of the staples, you can choose whatever staples that you want, but mainly this deck is pretty much all SRs. If you don't own anything else and you want to play around with kind of a new deck and have some fun, the best deck that you could play is probably Suship. Again, I don't know why this slipped through. It doesn't really make sense to me that it slipped through, because if we're going to honestly look at it, the entire archetype has nothing to do with anything in the solo mode, but it's cool that it did slip through. The only thing that really you lost with this deck was Zeus. Other than Zeus, this deck is pretty much at 100% full power, ready to play. All right, next is Zombie World. This is a deck that slips through every single time. Last Theme Chronicle, it slipped through too. The reason that it slips through is because Shiranui is here, and Shiranui is actually an archetype that is in solo mode. And because it is in solo mode, you can play Zombie World. Zombie World is a very cool deck. It's a synchro deck. It's a link deck. It can do so many different plays. It puts Zombie World on the field, which can have a great interaction with a lot of different decks. So if your opponent's playing Monarchs, you can stop them from tribute summoning. If your opponent's playing Beetroopers, you turn all their monsters into zombies. If they're playing Orcus, you turn all their machines into zombies. And it can really mess with a lot of decks because it turns everything into zombies. And then you can, of course, use Doomkin Baller Drock to negate their effects, banish their cards. The deck is essentially a full power, and this is another one that I would consider fairly budget because, yes, you're probably seeing a lot of URs on the screen, but here's the positive part. If you simply go to the structure deck area, this deck is a structure deck, so you can just buy it outright, and you can mix it even if you don't have any hand traps whatsoever. You can mix it with a few dangers, and the totally free Shiranui deck that they give you just by completing the Shiranui chapter, and you have a very, very competitive deck. Like I said, just buy 3 structure decks and complete that chapter, and you essentially have a deck that pretty much will get you 3,100 free gems to invest in any deck that you want. This is a fantastic budget option if you don't own any of the decks already, but if you do own the decks already, regardless, this is just a fantastic option to play. And next is another cheap, fun budget deck option that you have here. This is Skull Servants. This is based all around this monster from Legend of Blue Eyes. Basically, it's 300 attack. It's not really impressive in terms of stats, but you have the card called King of the Skull Servants, which gains attack for every single Skull Servant in the graveyard. And basically, every single Skull Servant monster in the archetype counts as Skull Servant in the graveyard. So you essentially just fill your graveyard up with all of these Skull Servants, White Mare, and all these other cards, White Baking. And you can use the Zombie World package to turn everything into zombies. Put as many of them in the graveyard, and you essentially attack for game. You have tons of ways to get them to the graveyard. You can mix it with Dangers. You can mix it with... basically, you can mix it with Zombie Control. You can mix it with so many different... just general archetypes, probably Dangers plus the Zombie World package plus just this stuff in general. A few board breakers is a really fun way to play the deck. Definitely one of the better ones. And then you just, for the Link monsters, are basically all just zombie Link monsters and dark Link monsters that you can go into generically. Again, you can mix this with the Dangers, because the Dangers are, luckily enough, the Dangers actually are in the solo mode. So you fill this 50% Dangers for 50% Skull Servants, put a bunch of Skull Servants in the graveyard, summon a few Kings, and just attack for game. It's actually kind of fantastic. It's crazy how good this actually is. And then you have things like Mizukis to bring them back from the graveyard. Bring back the King of the Skull Servants from the graveyard. This build is not super optimized, but overall, if you were to optimize this build, it's probably one of the funnest decks that you could possibly play, and you're going second, so you're just having a blast. It's a really awesome deck to play. Next is Orcus. This is another deck that can be mixed with Dangers. This is one that also had a few cards come off the ban list recently, so it's essentially at full power here. You have the Gearsu all unlocked. You have the Harp Horror unlocked. Symbol Skeleton unlocked. You have pretty much everything. Galatea unlocked. The archetype is essentially at 100% full power. You can play this... yeah, it's at full power. The only thing you're missing is technically the Nightmare Mermaid, but let's be honest, that's probably never going to come back, because it turns any two monsters into a full Orcus combo, so that's probably not going to happen. But overall, it's still pretty good, because again, you could just use the Dangers, put them into the graveyard, and start comboing off. That's probably the best way to do it. Again, this build is perhaps not the most optimized, just because I kind of put these together just to show you which decks are the best. It doesn't mean that, you know, the deck is the best. Doesn't mean like the exact build is the best. But definitely, it's definitely a very, very strong deck, and a fully optimized list can be very good. You can also use some of the newer machine support, like the Sargus, the new Exceed monster for machines. You can actually use that package in here, and that is actually not a bad card. That's what they're using in the TCG right now, because obviously some of the Orcus cards came off the ban list in the TCG too. But in terms of Theme Chronicle decks, this is probably one of the best ones that you can play. It can make Link monsters so easily, and like I said, you can mix this with so many different archetypes, but Dangers would probably be the best. Out of the options that you have available to you, Dangers would probably be the best. Alright, next up is, what are these called? Technically, this is like an insect pile deck. It's not any one insect deck, but it's Beetroopers, which were in the solo mode, but it's also got Battle Wasps. So you have a deck called Dragon Link that is basically rockets plus a bunch of random dragon monsters. This is the equivalent to that. It's basically like it's Insect Link. It's basically a bunch of insect monsters, and the main thing that they do is link to combo off and basically get more and more and more cards on board. You play a Crawler package, you play a Battle Wasp package, you play the small Goki Pole package, the Beetrooper package. You play a bunch of really good insect monsters in your deck, and just good generic insect support, resonance insect, obviously. You play a bunch of good generic insect type monsters, and the entire goal essentially is just to combo off and end on a strong insect board. And there's tons of support that you can do, and it's very easy to play. Well, not really. It's not particularly easy to play, but it's got interesting combo lines. It's a fun deck to play, and it's definitely one worth learning. And they recently actually did come out with that pack, the specific pack just for the Battle Wasps and the Beetroopers, which is actually really cool. They came out with a specific pack just for them, so it's easier to get them now. You don't have to like craft your UR points directly into it. But it's a really fun deck to play. Like I said, it's like Dragon Link but with insects. The only thing is, this one is probably not as easy to learn as some of the others, because you do have to learn the Crawler Soma combo, which if you look that up, it's actually you kind of have to learn it. If you were to play this in like not the Theme Chronicle, you could actually go into Baron de Fleur with the full combo, but because you can't do that, and this is obviously not that situation, you can, because Baron de Fleur is banned in this event, you can go into some of the other Battle Wasp monsters like this level 12, for example, which it's a consolation prize. Obviously, it's not Baron de Fleur, but it's still cool that you still do have very good options. But this is another deck that's just very, very, very strong and very fun too. All right, lastly, we've got Rikka. This is another deck that is actually quite strong. It's very, very good in just generally. Rikka is a very good deck. Now, I will say some of the Sun Avalon stuff is actually missing. Unfortunately, some of the Sun Avalon stuff is missing, but it's cool. You just replace it. Again, Sun Avalon, I think it's Sun Avalon, the Sowing. I forget what the full name is. The Sowing card, the one that I think special summons from grave, the searchable card, that card unfortunately is banned in this event, and a few of the link monsters are also banned in this event. So you have to play more of a pure version of the Rikka deck, which isn't really a problem because Rikka pure is essentially, number one, you get a lot of it out of the solo mode, which is already really cool. But the rest of the Rikka deck is actually really, really budget. This is a very good budget deck generally. It's basically like Lair of Darkness with plants, and it's more consistent than Lair of Darkness. And again, what's cool about it is that it's very easy. It's kind of a cheap deck. There's not a lot of URs that you actually have to pick up for this deck, which makes it a lot more budget. And there's very, very budget builds. If you're going a little less budget, then you have to pick up something like this aromatherapy, maybe this Sylvan card. But if you're going super duper budget, there's actually there's some really good budget options out there for this deck. Definitely a very, very strong deck. All the decks I showed today have been quite good. If there's anything that I missed, any deck that you think would perform very well in the Theme Chronicle event, let me know in the comment section down below. And thank you for watching. La, 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 la.